Wait, this isn't an interview, is it? We're just kind of hanging out, right?
Hi, I'm Jason Davies from 11 Dimensions Media, and we're the distributor for ESI Audiotechnik, and I'm here with C.J Vanston and Klaus Riethmuller from ESI. And just curious, you've been working on some pretty interesting stuff recently. You want to kind of fill us in?
Interesting is an interesting word.
How about some awesome stuff?
Well, you'll be the judge of that. I'm having some of the most fun I've ever had working on a project, and creatively, it's there's no holds barred. Derek Smalls from Spinal Tap gave me a call. Yes, he evidently cashed out his 401k and is spending his whole savings on making the record of his dreams that he's always wanted to make. So it's the Derek Smalls solo album, and we've been kind of calling all the people that we love and adore and worship and asked them if they'd like to be part of this, and most of them said no, and until we told them we'd pay them a lot of money, and so they've reluctantly agreed to play on this, and we've got a lineup of all the way from Donald Fagen and Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, David Crosby, Peter Frampton, Chad Smith from the Chili Peppers, Jim Keltner, Greg Bissonette. Did I say David Crosby? I did.
You did.
Paul Schaefer. I could go on and on. There's 20 more names that I'm going to stash for later.
Wow.
But Derek has decided to go all out. So we've been working on this solo album, and I didn't want to do it either, but then again, it was the money. So
Sure.
I agreed to do it. We've been having a great time. This record has got a little bit of everything on it, and I'm getting to use all my tools, all the influences, all the great influences I grew up with, from Zappa to Zeppelin to Prince to, I mean, a little bit of everything on this record. You know, I meet a lot of manufacturers and people that build things and develop things. And I usually find the companies that have good people make good products. And we started with our relationship first before I started using the stuff that 11 Dimensions makes. And then later on, I started using some of your ESI stuff, and I'm super impressed with your company, because you guys are like a Swiss Army knife company. You make these little tools.
German.
Well, there you go. Say no more. But a lot of tools that people have forgotten that people like us need. And you're holding one right there, which I'm blown away that you walked in with this product.
Give us an overview of this. This is a pretty nice little piece here. I love the color. It looks like it's got quite a few MIDI ports on it.
Yes, this is actually our new M8UX.
I love this. You know, all the screws. I mean, the build quality is super awesome, which is so important in a studio to me. But you know, this is a MIDI interface, which I haven't seen anybody develop a good MIDI interface in 15 years.
Looks like you've got a few in the rack. That
Well,
might
I
be
went for
older
my.
than that
I've still
even.
got a Studio 3 somewhere lurking down.
I remember
where
that.
it ended up. I keep him there because I loved what Opco used to do. Opco was a great
I was
company.
there.
And once they disappeared, all the MIDI interfaces, other than I use these Uniters, these eMagics, and they're tanks.
Yep.
But the drivers are 15 years old.
Right.
Everything is really kind of antique, but I'm afraid, this matter of fact, these don't turn off. Everything in the studio turns off. Those don't turn off. I'm afraid to turn those off because how do I replace them if something happens? So all the other MIDI interfaces that are on the market to me have got these menus. I've got to drill down through all these things. If something happens to one of those, it's just too complex for me. And then Klaus walks in with this, and Kazi walks in with the this beautiful MIDI interface with auto sensing for ins and outs.
Right. So
and it's a USB 3, and it's got a host USB jack, which I really dig. Which means, and by the way, I love the lock on it.
yeah, you don't want people stealing it.
What's the name? What's the universal name for that lock?
Kensington style.
Kensington. Yeah, it's got a Kensington lock on it. But this can also be bus powered, which, you know, being on the road, and you're in the middle of frickin' Moldova, and you lost the power supply. So this really surprised me to see.
We're pretty excited about it. I mean, you know, I'm used to looking at MIDI interfaces where it says in and out
Yeah,
And
this
I
is a
noticed
bit
that it doesn't
different, yes.
say that, and that's part of the auto sensing.
Correct.
feature?
Basically, you just have ports that are numbered. So on the front, you have 1 to 8, and on the back side, you have 9 to 16. And each of them can be an input or an output. So you can actually have 16 inputs or 16 outputs, depending on what you need.
Or any combo.
Or any combo, yeah. And what makes it even cooler is you can use multiple of these at the same time in one system.
Well, that's what the host jack is for.
Correct.
For
So you
cascading
can
music.
actually cascade these.
Right.
Well, the other thing I like about it is sometimes I don't want to turn my computer on. Have you ever had that experience where you just want to play all your modules in
Oh,
your
right,
rack?
right. No, I haven't because I don't have a MIDI interface that does it.
Well, like the Opcode one you mentioned, you can
Right.
do that. And
Studio 5 did.
so what's so cool about this is you've got different routings.
Correct.
You go into that a
Yes,
little
there
bit.
is a
That's
number
kinda
of
cool.
routings where you can route inputs to outputs. So there is one that can each port on the front is an input and each on the back side is an output. That is by default. But there is also a routing that allows you to merge and signals. So there is the different applications. One is you just when your computer is not turned on, what you just said is
Play all your modules
You play
in
all
the
the
rack.
models directly at one time, or you can also use it as a very cool standalone like MIDI patch bay.
That's so cool.
For to merge signals or to work it as a through box. Yeah.
So my friend Jordan Rippey is the keyboard tech for Toto, and David Page and Steve Porcaro, the keyboard players in that band, who are two of my heroes. I produced their last record.
I remember, it's a great
and-
album.
Thank you, and well,
Good work on
thank you
that.
them. It was great, yeah. But they're the highest technical level for keyboards. They won't touch USB on the road.
Interesting.
They don't want a bunch of USB keyboards in, so it's all MIDI. So they've struggled to kind of find technology that keeps up with their MIDI needs. And like I said, I think MIDI's been overlooked as a rock solid, especially for the road. And even for the studio here, you see how many things I have here.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm taking USB out of all this crap and bringing it in somewhere. So when you walked in with this, that's something that's been totally overlooked.
Yeah.
And that's why I said Swiss Army knife. You guys are making these tools that I really appreciate.
Well, it's great too because I mean, obviously, with virtual instruments, you can run a lot of stuff just off of your computer, but there's still all kinds of hardware synths out there that you want to have access to,
Right.
and a patch bay like this makes it really.
Well, I think if later on, if you take a little video of my vintage room, you'll see why I need a MIDI interface. MIDI, MIDI,
Yeah.
MIDI.
I was trying to count the ports you're going to need.
MIDI.
You might need a couple of these.
There's
USB there.
This doesn't even have MIDI.
Okay. You guys have been doing some great work with audio interfaces as well. Obviously, CJ's got your new U22 XT, and we've been talking about that other interface you're working on, which should be cool for him. But the other thing is your reference monitors.
Oh yeah,
I mean, just today I was listening to the Unico 5 Pluses with the ribbon tweeters, and I was astounded at the sound for the size. And you've been liking them too, right?
The fives.
The 5s and the 8s.
I have the eights also. Yeah, the first thing I did was plug the fives in, and I got the subwoofer with them. And okay, that sounds really amazing. The high end, the high end sounded really beautiful to me. I'm really picky about high end. I mean, you can always get nice low end out of this or that.
Yeah.
The low end was great, but I had the subwoofer, and I thought, well, let's see what it sounds like with a subwoofer on. So I bent over, the subwoofer was off.
You couldn't even tell. Yeah, right. You thought it was.
I thought the subwoofer was on.
It was giving
so
you more bass than you expected.
Yeah, and
Yes.
it's a small space. I've got a second control room in my vocal booth. It's kind of my podcast control room for video and audio, and that's where I put the fives because it's a small room, and they sound amazing.
You mentioned something about the way the tweeters or the high end was sounding, and my understanding is that these ribbon tweeters more closely mimic the way sort of the human ear hears sound. Could you give us any kind of technical info on that?
Well,
what's
I mean,
the deal with ribbons?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I don't know.
basically, I mean, of course, the way they're working is different than the Silk Dome tweeter, and I mean, there have been a number of companies doing this kind of studio monitors in the past. What makes it more interesting is maybe our approach, why we chose it. Originally, when we started developing the first generation of the unique monitors, we came up with an idea to go more for like a post-pro market because we have a lot of requests for that and everything. And in
Post-production video
post-production
or
for video.
Video,
Yes.
gotcha. Yeah.
And for video, obviously, you have a lot of vocals, a lot of voice is very important and everything. And then this is the executive frequency response, or the frequency area where ribbon tweeter and these AMT type tweeters that we're using are very important, because you have more precision in that area than most typical silk dome solutions. So we started using that, and that was basically the whole idea from which we started doing the development of these.
So for intelligibility,
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, which, how would that not translate to music, you know? It's great. Like I said, the first thing I heard was this really smooth, not harsh high end.
Right.
That's just banging me over the head,
Right.
trying to impress me with the, the high end. I mean, I plugged them in and I stopped thinking about them. They just sounded great, and I didn't think about, I'm going to put my old speakers in there, because I've got 7 or 8 different kinds of speakers in this room that I can put in that room, and they've stayed in there since. So that's saying a lot.